Alabama is better than Florida State when the Seminoles don't have Jordan Travis. I'm not going to argue with you on that point. But what happened in college football yesterday was very bad for the sport overall because it sets the precedent that in reality, if we're going to be honest, the regular season really doesn't matter that much. Winning all your games at a Power 5 school, when you've played some big-time non-conference teams, like 2 teams from the SEC, really is not that big of a deal. Winning your conference championship in a Power 5 conference, well, it doesn't really mean that much at all. It all depends on how healthy your quarterback is. That's what dictates it. Now, if the goal is just to get the 4 most talented overall teams or the 4 biggest brands into the playoff, then let's not even play a regular season. Why are we wasting our time? Player safety. Let's just combine the recruiting rankings and the NFL draft projections for the preseason and take the 4 top teams the computer spits out. Let's just do that. Saves everybody a lot of time. The fact is, results have to matter from the whole season, not just a portion of it. If anybody out there can explain to me how if Florida State is so bad now without Jordan Travis, then how in the hell did the committee end up still ranking them in front of 1-loss Georgia and Ohio State? If they're good enough to be ranked ahead of those 2, then certainly they're still good enough to be ranked ahead of Alabama, right? But see, that would mean the rankings have a sense of order, but they don't. Let's not beat around the bush anymore. Boo Corrigan can't explain it well because it goes against where the committee continuously had Florida State ranked even down the stretch. And deep down, they know what they did. You're not going against Greg Sankey and Nick Saban. I'll tell you what happens if Jalen Milroe gets hurt in bowl practice and can't play in the game? Does Georgia get to take Alabama's spot? Right? If we're going to talk about the caveats of injuries, that should happen. There were multiple teams that would have been favored over TCU last year. And don't forget, TCU had 1 less loss than Alabama, and they lost their conference championship game and got in. And that team beat Michigan. Everybody talks about the ass beating that took place in the national championship, but forgot that TCU team beat Michigan. In reality, Danny Cannell's right. It's an invitational now. But the main reason I think the committee did it, and they're able to get away with it, is this is the last year of the 4-team playoff. Not that there won't be arguments when we get to 12, but none of those arguments will involve an undefeated Power 5 conference champion. I do want to say congrats to Alabama. The players, the coach, they had nothing to do with this. They should take advantage of it. I don't blame them. But I feel awful for the Florida State players and coaches who basically played a whole season for absolutely no reason at all. Speaking about 100%, I know what is 100% delicious, and that's all the incredible meat over at Good Ranchers. What do green eggs and your Christmas dinner have in common? They both need ham to be complete, and they're going absolutely ham over at Good Ranchers. All right, they've got spiral cut heritage pork masterpiece from Good Ranchers. All right, for Christmas.
Spiral cut?
Spiral cut. How about that? Let's get it.
Yes,
Nothing like a good spiral. You know more about that than anybody. It's not the kind of ham that'll steal the show at your family. It's the kind of ham that'll steal the show with your family gathering. And guess what? You get it free with any Good Ranchers subscription. That's a whopping $99 value that you get for free in your first order. So head on over to goodranchers.com and subscribe today with our code BOOSTER, BOOSTER, to claim your free limited stock holiday ham before they sell out. But act fast. This offer will not last forever. You need to order before December 11th for guaranteed delivery by Christmas. Head to goodranchers.com. Use our code BOOSTER, BOOSTER, when you subscribe to get your free 10-pound holiday ham. Don't settle for the same old holiday fare. Elevate your feast with Good Ranchers this year. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. Winners are just people who eat ham from Good Ranchers.
Wow.
Bringing my co-host, former Michigan quarterback. Got to be happy about where Michigan is. I know when they drew Alabama that they didn't look exactly thrilled about it. We're going to talk about that. David Cone, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver, Blaine Crane. Guys, it's something that's been talked about. We need to talk about it. We're going to talk about it with Tim Brando when we get him on here, and we want to know what you think. But David, I think what happened yesterday was wrong, and I think we've lost. I think we took power over integrity. That's what I think happened. And I think Dan Mullen said it fantastically yesterday. This Alabama team needed a miracle to beat an Auburn team that got their pants pulled down by New Mexico State at home. And yet we want to sit here and act like a Florida State double-digit win over Florida on the road. doesn't matter. You know, a Florida State double-digit win in the conference championship game against a 10-2 team, it doesn't matter. Hey, you know what they did. If you understand college football, you know what they did.
Well, I didn't hear Dan Mullen say that, but I thought you made all the right points here. I mean, here's how I'm feeling right now. College football is an unserious sport. And I hate to say that because it's my favorite. But, I mean, anytime you have a situation where an unbeaten conference champ, you know, doesn't even have a path to win the championship, like, that's unserious. And we've seen it with every iteration of college football. This isn't just a prisoner of the moment situation. We saw it pre-BCS. We saw it in the BCS era. We've seen it now with the college football playoff. I mean, anytime you're having to resort to phrases like, well, we got to make sure we get the 4 best teams, not the 4 most deserving teams, or, well, who do you think Vegas would have favored in these games? You've already lost. Like, that's not a serious sport. You never see that in the NFL or in Major League Baseball. And I want to make it clear, I do not blame the committee. Okay, have they been wildly inconsistent for the past month? Yes, they have. Jordan Travis injured his leg weeks ago, and yet Florida State was ranked ahead of the one-loss team, so we already knew that he was going to be out. And then to say, well, at the last moment, Florida State is not as good as Texas or Alabama, but somehow they're still better than Georgia and Ohio State, so we rank them 5. I don't understand that. Just stick to what you're saying, because everyone can get behind the fact they lost their starting quarterback. Move them back to 15, for God's sakes. But I don't blame the committee. They actually did what they had to do, right? They fell on their sword, they played the villain role, and they gave us a more compelling matchup. That much is true. Alabama's a top team. It's going to be a better playoff matchup with Alabama and Michigan than I think it would have been with Florida State with either a backup or possibly a third-string quarterback. You know, this much we know. But I blame the selection process. I mean, anytime you're going to get a committee of bureaucrats together and say, let's let this group of people determine who the champions are for our sport, that is a recipe for disaster. How do we not already know that? Now, I'm hopeful that most of these issues will be solved when we move to a 12-team playoff, even though, you know, look, it's not the expansion that I'm most excited about. It's the objective metrics, like league champs, wild cards, all the things that all other serious sports do. Here's what I would do. Take all of the power and pressure off of any sort of committee and put it on the conferences. Let the conferences send who they want to represent. If you want to send your league champ, like Alabama, send your league champ to represent you in the postseason. If you want to send the team that had the best season but didn't win the league, like TCU last year, or in some instances Ohio State, well then send them and put it on the leagues. But until we get to something like that, until we have more leadership when it comes to the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness and collectives, college football is an unserious sport.
I agree with you 100%. And again, I think if we had the 14 playoff for like the next 5 years, they wouldn't have done this. They'd have put Florida State in because this sets a precedent. It does, that the regular season doesn't matter. You can say what you want. You talk about the criteria, and Blaine, obviously, I want to know what you think about it. I love when people bring up the criteria and say, oh, well, there's a rule in there that says if a player's injured, that needs to be a factor. Okay, so does that factor outweigh the conference champion factor? Does that factor just override every other factor? You can't sit here and talk about, oh, well, there's all these factors. Here's one factor. There it is. That's it. Decision made. No, it is a combination of all those factors. But we get to the 12-team playoff, we'll be arguing over, you know, the 11th team, the 12th team, whatever.
Hopefully.
But
I hope so.
But that argument won't involve an undefeated Power 5 conference champion. That's my whole point. Mm-hmm. This isn't an argument over Liberty getting in with a Group of 5 schedule. We're talking about an undefeated Power 5 team that scheduled 2 SEC teams in the non-conference and beat both of them and handled their business. We won't be arguing about that anymore because regardless of injury, they would be in. So my question is, if Jalen Milroe would have got hurt in the first quarter of the Georgia game and Alabama would have found a way to win because Georgia didn't play good, would Alabama have been left out?
Well, I mean, that would come down to the backup quarterback in the eye test.
We've seen the eye test. They're trash.
Well, you asked me a question, and that would be the answer. I mean, your quarterback gets hurt, and it all comes down to the criteria. These are the reason these guys are here. This is their job, right? They dropped the criteria before. And if we'd had a problem with it, we should have done something when it came out, all right? It's going to be subjective. This is what they're supposed to do. They said, all right, if key players get hurt, whether that's during the season or in the postseason, they were factored that into the decision that they made. And that's what they did. This isn't about everything that Florida State did was remarkable. I think Florida State should get in. I do. I think so. but I understand what the committee did because they put it in the criteria, right? And the Florida State, we can all sit here and say that Florida State is not the same team without Jordan Travis, especially on offense. It's just not the same. I do agree with you. Alabama will be a lot better game. I think if anything, you look at this, you got to remember what college football is now. College football is a business, all right? It is a business. This committee has gotten it wrong multiple times in multiple weeks, but we sit up here and then complain when they got it wrong again. Who's surprised? Not me. You were screwed either way in this situation, but they have something they can fall on, and that is in the criteria.
No, again, I that's one part of the criteria. Can we stop acting like in the criteria it says, by the way, none of the other factors or criteria matters if somebody gets hurt? That's not what it says. You're misconstruing the truth. That's one factor in all of the criteria. It's not, here's this conference champ, overall record strength, the record strength of schedule. But, P.S., none of that matters if the quarterback gets hurt. That's not what it says. It is one of the few factors. They didn't treat it like one of the few factors. They treated it like the only factor. And I do understand why they did it. Of course I understand why they did it. Alabama's in the SEC. Greg Sankey runs college football. Alabama and Michigan is going to be a bigger brand matchup and a bigger money maker and TV ratings maker than the Florida State game would have been, going in there with a quarterback when a lot of people thought they'd be a lame duck team, which we don't know. A lot of people thought TCU was going to get destroyed by Michigan, and they beat them. My problem is, deep down, you said it yourself, you thought Florida State should be in. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that? Because it's the right thing to do, because you understand the sport. You understand what we thought college football was about. But this just goes to prove it even more, and we're not naive. It's $1 billion industry. Mm-hmm. Look at these TV contracts. This is about, just like every other aspect of life, if you have the most money and you have the most power, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. This is the mayor's kid being allowed to start at shortstop because he's the mayor's kid. That's exactly what it is, and let's not pretend like it's not.
One thing about that, though, is the SEC does it deliver in these playoffs. Right?
Without a doubt.
That's one of the things where it's like when people say, how could you possibly leave the SEC out when all they do is win when they get these moments? This one is particularly tough because, like I said yesterday, it's one of those situations where the national landscape actually worked against Alabama and the SEC, and they still got the benefit of the doubt. I told you guys yesterday it was probably a 50% chance that they slid Alabama up. Now, before the committee actually made their selection process, I saw that it was officially 42%. Was what Vegas had.
And FanDuel started putting odds on Bama.
Really, guys? We're all just kidding ourselves. It was always 100%.
For sure.
It was always 100%. There was never going to be a situation where Alabama, who just beat the number one team in the country, one of the best wins of the season, got left out. It just wasn't going to happen. And if Florida State had Jordan Travis, they would have left Florida State in there, and they would have put Alabama over Texas and ignored the head-to-head earlier in the season, and that's what we would be upset about today. But the question I have on the injury, and this was going around yesterday, I want to ask both of you this. Would it have behooved Florida State to just lie about Jordan Travis's injury and say it looked like it was broken, but really he's week to week and we think he'll be
What do you mean you can't?
He broke his leg on live television.
What do you look? Hey,
he broke his leg. I get what you're saying, but you're not getting away with that.
We were very cautious.
He shattered his leg.
You said hold on. You said you're not getting away with it. They tricked us about Cam Rising for 7 weeks.
That is true.
Okay, well, I didn't watch Cam Rising break his leg.
I watched Cam Rising's knee spontaneously combust on television.
Okay, guys, just hypothetically.
Okay, no, hypothetically, I get it, but they would understand what Jordan Travis did against North Alabama or North Texas, whoever the hell it was.
Can't prove it.
His ankle was facing the other way.
He's ahead of schedule.
I get it. No, I get it. It's another thing. Dude, that's funny you bring up Aaron Rodgers. Look how the Jets changed when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. This was a significant injury. You saw the change. And we can go through all the criteria. That's fine.
The Jets won all their games after Aaron Rodgers got hurt?
No, that's what he's saying. Like, the Zach Wilson was a big impact.
Yeah, he was, but Florida State won all their games.
Oh, yeah.
The Jets are terrible.
But you see, you guys, we can see the drop-off in Florida State's football team. That's what I'm saying. If we're talking about criteria, Alabama checks most of the criteria boxes. I mean, 5th in strength of schedule. Florida State's 55th. Like, Alabama has a lot
Florida State beat LSU worse than Alabama did. Alabama barely beat an Auburn team that's terrible. Barely beat a USF team.
We always say this about the Auburn game. Throw out the records, right?
No. See, here's the deal. This is where you screw up. That's in the criteria, right? in your beautiful criteria, a score with common opponents. That's in your beautiful criteria.
You just brought up the criteria.
that you
Alabama
pull
has
back
a 5th
from.
strength of schedule. Florida State has a 55th strength of schedule.
Look at the common opponents. Look at the common opponents who they played.
Okay.
Bro, again, if everything is even, you're right. If Alabama and Florida State were undefeated and we were comparing 2 undefeated teams, I'm with you. We're not doing that. Stop pretending like we're doing that. Florida State is undefeated. That is not even. Why did TCU get in over Alabama last year? They had one less loss. Bama had 2 losses. TCU had 1 loss after they lost the conference championship game, didn't even win their conference championship, had 1 less loss to Alabama, and they still got in. With a what?
But what makes it
With a backup quarterback.
What makes it tougher, though, is that Florida State went out of their way to schedule really tough games. I mean, the FSU-LSU opening game was like the marquee matchup, and we said all season, like, that could be a game that either keeps someone out of the playoff or propels them into it. Because I had so many Alabama fans yesterday. I mean, even members of my wife's family texted me that Florida State plays nobody. I'm like, y'all have a common opponent that Florida State beat worse than y'all. Don't come at me about Florida State plays no one. Oh, if you really want Alabama in the playoff, just use that their quarterback got injured. That's the only thing that you have to say is like, their quarterback got injured. I'm sorry. It really is tough. You got to keep them out, put Alabama in, and it's a more compelling playoff. That's the only argument, and I think it's a legit one because the playoff will be better for it. I just hate to see it.
I'd see it because it sets a bad precedent. But again, we're going away from the 4 team. So I think they
And it's
got an opportunity to do it.
that you voted against expanding the playoff this year.
Not just the ACC, it was the whole alliance, right?
Yeah, well, if I'm Florida State,
God!
this is if I'm the ACC commissioner, this is the worst thing that could have happened.
Chickens
If I'm Florida
come home to
State and them,
roost.
I'm getting out. I'm gone. I'm gone. We can go undefeated in this conference, not get in the national championship game. This would never happen in the SEC. Would never happen. You would never see that happen. Hey, YouTube, that's right. Got the Lady Ballers here. Maybe you didn't know we have a sports show. Probably the best one you've ever heard about. Talk a little bit of everything. So thanks for stopping by. Going to be reacting to some clips from our new movie. It's got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Biggest launch in Daily Wire history. So go check it out if you haven't. Hit that subscribe button to this channel. Call us. Hop in the live chat. It's a hell of a time.